It's just that time of the year. Ain't nobody got time for dry lips. Earth, Wind, and Fire. This is where we get into the really fun reviews, or not reviews, but videos that come at the end of the year into the beginning of a new year. So this video, as you can tell by the title, my top reads of 2024. Hold on, I got my laptop in front of me and I'm about to check the shipping on something real quick, real fast. What you mean, player? Come on. This is the slowest shipping of life. I'm 2 weeks. 2 weeks shipping continental US. I think it's more a testament of how I think postal services in various different countries are struggling. At this time, mail service to Canada is temporarily suspended due to the strike of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. A lot of USPS workers, United States Postal Service workers, are overworked, and they can't keep up with volume. I heard something about the Royal Mail Service, the UK's mail service, that's had some issues. Royal Mail, kind of sad. It's sad. Anyway, that's not what this video is about. This video is my top reads of 2024. There's only 5 of them. I do this every year since I've started my channel. I go through all of my 5-star reads. I don't have many. I never have many. And I go from the bottom to the top. So I save the top 3 for last, saving the top read of the year as the last book featured in the video. So let's go ahead and jump right in. This shouldn't be a long video. I'm excited because I read way less this year. Oh, bye, Alice. I read way less this year because it was just a year where my reading decreased. And asterisk, caveat, disclaimer, I still read more than most people read in a year. So take that with a grain of salt, because what is a lot for me is not a lot for somebody else. What is little for me is not little for somebody else. I'm a firm believer that I'm not a Justin Bieber fan. I only maybe know a couple of his songs just because I couldn't escape them. Anyway, definitely not a Justin Bieber fan. I'm a firm believer that if you read one book this year and you really loved it, that's all that matters. What matters, I think, is you're enjoying what you're reading and you like the pace and you're getting a lot of enjoyment out of what you're reading and how you're reading it and how you're digesting it. It's not about numbers. And so typically for me, I read from 2020 to 2023, I would average at around 52 to 56 books a year. That's approximately a book a week for the year. This year, I'm clocking in. Gotta get it in the throat. I'm clocking in at around 25-ish, 25, which is not bad considering how strange 2024 was. There were a lot of, I could go days without reading, not because I didn't want to, I just couldn't focus on it. There were other things going on that demanded my attention. But I still managed to read some really good things. And I have 5-star reads out of those 20-something books. And they were good. One was a reread. I didn't reread as much as I normally do this year in a year, but one was a reread. Again, because I read less. And so if I know I'm reading less, I'm going to read new books because I know I have less space. So out of the 20-something books, let's start from the bottom. Started from the bottom. It's really the top of the bottom, but you know what I'm saying. Started from the bottom. Now we're here. This is the only reread. Faces in the Water by Janet Frame. Now, my top 3 of the year are not allowed to be rereads. They're just not. But I read this for the first time in 2020, Faces in the Water by Janet Frame. Janet Frame is considered one of New Zealand's most notable authors. She was misdiagnosed with schizophrenia, and she was scheduled to be lobotomized back when mental institutions and asylums were state-run things, right? And of course, we don't do lobotomies anymore. My gosh. But she was misdiagnosed with schizophrenia. And so this book, and she spent quite a bit of I think I like 6, 7 years, maybe 8, in state-run mental institutions. And it was very traumatic for her. And so she has written several pieces of fiction about madness and these institutions, and Faces in the Water in particular is one of those narratives. I have a review on this. If I can, I'll remember to link my reviews actually, when this goes live, I won't have some of these reviewed yet, but I do have a review on this. I reviewed it this year in 2024. This is a really, really touching book. Whew, it's intense. It's sad. It's deep. It's one of those books, if you like a narrative about being the odd man out, being misunderstood, and because you're misunderstood and you're not crazy, but because you are different and you're just seeing the world differently and you're choosing not to be trapped in the matrix, if you will, you're going to be called crazy, right? So this, I like to say, is a shout out to all the misfits. It is beautifully, beautifully written, but it is a rough read. And by rough, I mean it's intense, but it is, I think, fabulous. 5 stars. If you like Sylvia Plath, Virginia Woolf, that type of story, if you like stories about madness, if you like stories about mental institutions and asylums and just how gross they were, especially in mid-century, mid-20th century, when they were doing like electroshock therapy and lobotomies and stuff like that. This is also a narrative about how society ostracizes and tries to control and get rid of the undesirables because you don't think the way society wants you to think, right? You're the rebel, and so they want to get rid of rebels. Janet Frame, Faces in the Water, 5 stars all the way around. Number 4, this was going to be number 3, but it got bumped out by number 1. Number 1 shifted everything down because I read number 1 last at the end of the year. So this comes to no surprise if you watch this review, The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. It is a nonfiction. It's one of the only nonfictions that I read this year. I do typically read fiction, but this was the only nonfiction that I actually read this year. And it is a philosophical piece about, with Camus writing about why men choose to decide to contemplate, if you will, ending their own life. And he has a antidote to that, and that is creating. And how art and writing, in particular novel, the story, is a form of, it's a type of savior to that, if you will. And he has these religious arguments and scientific arguments, and he goes through some of his own favorite authors like Dostoevsky and notable works where those novels, those writers you can see the turmoil in their writing, but that writing also saved them in a way. And so it's a dense piece. It took me like 2 to 3 months to read this 138-page book, but you can see there's tons of, it's annotated to oblivion. I do have a review on this that goes into way more detail, but this is one of those books. It took me a while to get through. Don't regret it, and I will be reading more Camus. I don't know when, but I will. That is just one of those books where, if you're into existential dread, existential crises, why are we living in this matrix? I feel so disgruntled in life because I'm trapped by this routine and I want to get out of this routine, and this routine is stealing my joy. That is relatable. It's relatable. Number 3 was a buddy read. It was actually my was it my only buddy read? No, I did 2 buddy reads this year. It was one of my 2 buddy reads of the year. I buddy read way less this year too. Again, because my reading slowed down, so I'm not going to commit to something if I can't commit. But my friend Joanne and I, we read a book together every year, and our choice this year for 2024 was A Fine Balance. It took me about 6 weeks to read this 600-page book, taking place in 1975, India. And you have these 4, again, I have a review on this as well. You have these 4 characters, 3 males and 1 female, who end up living in a flat together. And they all come with these very complex, complicated, painful backgrounds, if you will. But they find solace in each other And it's a book about government corruption, love, relationship, friendship, familial relationships, how we're all connected in a lot of ways, exploitation, corruption. And it's beautifully written. It's beautifully written. It's a sad book. It's a sad book. It's very realistic as far as the realism of just human suffering in a lot of ways. But it's not just doom and gloom. There are some very, very beautiful passages in this book about genuine relationship, right? And how you can when you connect with somebody, you connect with somebody regardless of your respective backgrounds or what you may have been through that is different than the other person. And again, that's why it's called a fine balance, how that is life. Life is this fine balance straddling between the gruesome and the things in life that are joyful. And so anyway, this is one of those books that when you do let people know that you're reading it or you've read it, they're like, oh my gosh, it's one of my favorite pieces of fiction of all time. It's a hard book to read, but it's so good. There's a following with this book for good reason. Again, I'm not going through all the details of these stories, but because I have detailed reviews on them all. And the ones that I don't have posted yet, the last two I don't have posted yet, because one I would have just finished, and one is scheduled as of the recording of this video. It is scheduled for later in January. But what was I saying? I completely spaced out. Shoot. Oh, there's a reason why I'm not going into massive amounts of detail with these books. I never really do this in my top reads of the year, but just, hey, I liked it. Briefly, this is why. There you go. Número dos. Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove. Again, the review for this is coming sometime mid to late January. I adore this story. I really do. It is a sweeping Western that is largely character driven. You have this cast of characters that are they're going on a cattle drive from Texas to Montana a few decades after the American Civil War. So this is happening in the late 1800s. And it's a story about paternity and fatherhood, male leadership in particular, and the burden of that leadership, romance versus reality, because you have very young characters, teenage boys really, who are participating in this cattle drive, and they're getting their first dose of reality. They're green behind the ears, but that greenness ain't gonna last long, okay? Because they're about to be exposed to the dangers and the realities of the dwindling American West at this point. But it's still classic cowboys and Indians as well. Before anybody gets in it's not Indian, they're Native American or the first. I'm partially Native American. Don't come at me with that. I don't care. Most of us ain't that picky. No matter what the media tells you, most of us are like, don't speak for me. Don't speak for me. Anyway, yeah, this is a really sweeping, dynamic story. It's very masculine, and I think that's part of its charm for me, because we're not really getting these types of stories right now in publishing. Very masculine, and it's very masculine relationships, male bonding, male leadership. There's an emphasis now in publishing on the female voice, and I think at this point it's oversaturated. It was nice for me to take a break from female. Clearly I'm not a man, and as a woman, I don't always want to read the female perspective. I know how I think. One thing I don't know is how a man thinks. Men and women we different, okay? I don't care. We are different, and that's okay. Let's embrace those differences. I don't want to be a man. Y'all got a lot of weight on your shoulders. Lonesome Dove just brought out a lot of feelings, didn't it? This is a quick video. Number one. Drum roll, please. John Steinbeck's East of Eden. I predicted this would be a top read of the year, and I predicted that it would be a favorite, just an all-time favorite, and that it is. Whew. I haven't drafted the review for this yet. It's marinating. But so my description of this out of all the other four is really going to be shallow compared, because I haven't gone back through my annotations yet. It is fresh. I just finished it today. But I knew halfway through that this was going to be a favorite of the year. This is everything I love in a novel. Beautifully written. Steinbeck, man, Steinbeck is such a stud with his writing. The man is one of a kind. He's a rebel, right? And I have said this before. I love rebels. I love people two authors and people who just say the thing. They're not trying to be politically correct. They don't want to be politically correct. They're saying what needs to be said, and they don't care. They're not backing down. The man said what he said, and he's not changing it. And there are certain passages in this book, and same when I read Grapes of Wrath. It speaks. This is how you know something is a classic. The main themes about what he's saying about government and society and people and relationships, it just ages better with wine, and all of it still holds true today. This is a story. East of Eden, obviously, is pulling a lot with biblical themes and theology. And we are going through these families that are connected in this part of Salinas, California. Is where this is settled. And it's like, you could look at it as a story of generational curses and how names are important and how you're going to act out that name that you have. Again, I'm going off the top of my head with this one. I'm really ad-libbing this one because I just finished it. But, how we repeat the mistakes of our forefathers, even if we don't even realize that we're doing it. But if you really try and it takes effort, you can break out of that cycle. This book is fantastic. It's everything I love in a novel. Theological themes on corruption and the way that government works, society works, and just the baseness, and I mean just the debauchery of human nature, but also the good of human nature. The characters, there are just so many characters in this book that I'll be thinking about them for a long time. The twins, Caleb and Aaron. That's it. This is my top read of the year. I'm going to need to... This review probably won't go live until maybe February because I need to sit with this. Don't be surprised if it doesn't go live till March. This book, another reason why this is my top read of the year, East of Eden, is because my reading slowed down, like I said, a lot in 2024. I read about half of what I typically read in a year this year, which is fine. You got to roll with it. Go with the flow. That is a 600 page book, my edition. I flew through it. I read it in about 4 weeks, if that. I did have the luxury, if you will, of reading it over Thanksgiving. I got like 200 pages knocked out when I didn't have work because of Thanksgiving. So I was on a holiday break. But my focus wasn't that great this year with reading, which is why I read half of what I typically do. East of Eden focused me in a way I haven't been able to focus and compulsively read all year, where I was just able to sit down with this book and the pages flew. And this is a book, again, like I said, there's 600 pages, and the font, there's a lot of words on each page. The font is not big. It just got me to compulsively read in a way that I have not been able to read all year. Lonesome Dove kind of did that for me, but not in the same way. Even A Fine Balance did that for me, but not in the same way. John Steinbeck is just one of my favorites. He's up there for me with Dostoevsky. So those are my top reads of 2024. What are your favorites of the year? And if you could only pick one book to be in the number one slot, what would it be? I just knew because I had already read Grapes of Wrath. And so was that my top read of 2020? When did I read it? 2022 when I read it? It might have been, if not, it was in the top 3. East of Eden, I think for me, I like it better than Grapes of Wrath. And Grapes of Wrath is okay. But I knew that it was going to be a top read because I knew I got on with John Steinbeck, but it's just everything I love in a book. I love it. And this cover is immaculate. Let's just admire it one more time. Look at it. Anyway, please let me know your top read of 2024. Also, please feel free, stuttering, to like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. Also, feel free to follow me on Instagram where I get up to more book shenanigans. I post all of my book content there first, and I like to post the occasional goofy reel or meme in Instagram stories because life is short and it's not easy. So we should have a little chuckle. Okay? Okay.